Alrighty folks, today we're going to focus on a recipe that has two purposes. One, it can be dinner rolls on the side of your dinner. Two, it can be cinnamon rolls for your dessert. So we're going to make the dough. It's an enriched dough, which means it has some eggs and sugar and milk in it. And then we're going to divide it in half. We're going to use the first part for dinner rolls and the second part we're going to do for cinnamon buns. In this video, we're going to go over both processes and the baking times and how we would go about filling and rolling all of those things out. So let's go ahead and get started. To begin the mixing process, you're going to place your 115-degree water in the bowl with your yeast, using the dough hook to mix them into a paste. This allows the yeast to wake up while you're whisking together the rest of your ingredients. In a separate bowl, you're going to whisk together your eggs, sugar, salt, and milk, and then you're going to add your melted butter to that. Once your wet ingredients are mixed, you're going to add them to the bowl with your yeast paste in the bottom. Make sure you scrape down the bowl so you get everything added. Then you're going to use your dough hook to mix it up, making sure that there are no more yeast clumps remaining. I like to start it with the dough hook, stop the mixer, scrape it down with the rubber spatula, and then let the dough hook go a little bit longer. After you're confident there's no more yeast clumps left in your wet mixture, you're going to add your flour all at once. In order to prevent making a mess, I started using a deli container and then added all of the flour once I realized it would all go in. Next, you're going to turn your mixer to medium-low speed and let it go for about 5 minutes. After about 5 minutes, you'll see that your dough has started to come together into a ball and is slapping the sides of your mixing bowl. At this point, I like to turn it off and scrape down the bowl so there's no bits left in the bottom that aren't combined into my dough. Here you can see I'm testing how well the gluten is developed with the window pane test. I'm stretching my dough, and then I realize it's not quite ready yet because it starts to tear too quickly. So I'm going to let the mixer go for another few minutes just to develop the dough a little further. At this point I've decided that my mixer has done all it can do for my dough, and I'd like to knead it by hand just so it can get the final stage of gluten development. I'm going to dump it out of my bowl, lightly flour the surface, and then give it a good kneading. If you're making this dough by hand, if you don't have a stand mixer, this is what it will look like while you're kneading it. If you knead it by hand, it takes between 5 and 10 minutes in order to develop enough gluten to be ready for its first proof. I've used the stand mixer between 5 and 7 minutes, and it's still not quite ready. You'll know your dough is ready when it's nice, elasticy, and soft. Then you're going to place it in a well-oiled bowl for an hour and 15 minutes or until it doubles in size. over the course of an hour and 15 minutes, my dough rose a lot, as you can see here. What I'm going to do now is divide it in half. The first half I will shape into dinner rolls, and the second half I'll shape into cinnamon buns. The dinner rolls, I'm going to give it a loose tuck here and roll it into a log. I'm going to divide it into 12 pieces. You're supposed to bake this recipe in a 9x13 pan, but for some reason I don't own one of those. So I'm dividing these into 12 rolls instead of 15. But if you were going to bake them in a 9x13 pan, you could divide half of your dough into 15 rolls instead. My shaping technique for these is just to make sure that there's no opening left in the bottom. You kind of want to tuck with both your fingers and your thumb at the same time, and then flip the roll over to make sure that the seal is created. This will make sure that you have a nice, smooth, shiny surface to the top of your rolls. In a professional setting, each one of these rolls would be weighed to make sure that they were all the same size. But if you don't have a scale, do your best to divide them into 12 even pieces. Next, we're going to shape our cinnamon buns. On a lightly floured surface, you're going to roll your piece of dough out so that the length is 3 times the width, making sure that the dough is thin enough to not be cakey. I prepared my filling before this. While I was waiting for my dough to proof the first time, I'll put the instructions in the recipe. Normally, I'd like to spread my cinnamon roll filling with an offset spatula, but I could tell that because the chocolate chips were in this, it was going to start tearing my dough. So eventually I just smashed the filling around with my fingers, making sure that I went all the way out to the edges and that there were no uneven spots left over. Next, we're going to start the roll. You're going to roll and tuck, making sure that you end up with a nice spiral. At this point, I'm going to divide my dough into 12 cinnamon buns. If your filling is too squidgy and it starts to smush out of your rolls, you can refrigerate your dough to ensure that the filling all stays inside. However, my filling was pretty stiff, so it was able to survive the cutting process. I like to divide my dough into 4 pieces and then divide each of the 4 pieces into 3s, and that helps me ensure that each one of my rolls is the same size. After an hour and 15 minutes of proofing at room temperature with a piece of plastic wrap on the top, my rolls are ready to go in the oven, which I've preheated to 375 degrees during the final proofing process. I'm brushing my dinner rolls with an egg wash that I made with 1 egg, a tablespoon of water, and a pinch of salt. I whisked it all together, and now I'm brushing the tops so that they're nice and shiny when they come out of the oven. Cinnamon rolls don't need this, but the dinner rolls do. After everyone's all nice and egg washed, I'm going to put these guys in the oven and set a timer for 20 minutes. Alright everyone, these are our dinner rolls. They've been in the oven for 25 minutes. You can see that they're a nice golden brown color with a little sheen on the top that comes from the egg wash. How you're going to know when they're done is A, they'll get this nice color, and B, you can check the internal temperature of the middle rolls, and if they're above 200 degrees, then they're finished. We've got a few more minutes left on our cinnamon buns, and then we'll check back. Alright, we have cinnamon buns, folks. I gave these 5 more minutes in the oven just so they could get a nice browning. And then I'm going to let them cool for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to top them with this brown sugar caramel glaze that I made. And then we will dig right in. Alright everyone, this has been Erin from Sweets by Skip, thanking you for watching today and baking along with me. Please don't hesitate to check out my YouTube channel, give me a follow if you like what I'm doing, and make sure you let me know how things turn out when you bake them at home, either with pictures or messages. I'm so happy to hear from all of you, and thanks again for the support.